who has experience of mental distress. And it doesn't take a hardline position. It will help to support you wherever you are, wherever you've come from on your journey. And that is so paramount and so important to Barnet Voice that one of the considerations that Jose and I had was, well, hang on a second. If we're starting to realise that there's quite a clear consensus of opinion that's not really having an avenue for it through the current system, then we need to be clear. Pure Thought will have quite clear, definitive positions, not that aren't open to a whole lot of interpretation and understanding, and every case is different, but we will take lines on certain areas. For example, and we won't go into this discussion now, there's a lot of talk about the reintroduction or the widespread uptake of going back to ECT. For those that don't know, electric convulsive therapy. And that's something that you can read a paper that we've been writing about now. That's something that we don't say is all bad. We say it's about 92% bad. But there are 8% of people where it does serve a very good purpose. But once again, we're living in Barnet here, where Dr. Foster has recently said that if he could give it to every single patient within the first... Sorry. Forgive me, Dr. Foster. Dr. Parkins.
This is not an opportunity for defamation.
It's not defamation, it's talking about...
It sounds very
Sparky or not? Anyway. But he has come out and said if he could use the new suite to deliver it within 6 to 8 weeks to any patient as an inpatient setting, he would like to do that. And for those that have been through ECT and who have a better understanding of it, and that's something to do on a different night, you'll realise that's quite a scary statement for the person who's in charge of a borough to be really advocating. And so unless there's an organisation that can start challenging that, because for various political reasons, so many of the existing charities are quite rooted. You look like you want to ask a question. Oh, sorry, Miriam, forgive me. So, but just to make that point, so Barnet Voice is, I often use the phrase, it's all-encompassing. It really is there to support everybody at any point of their mental illness or suffering from mental distress. And basically the reason for setting Pure Thought up was so that we could actually have an agenda that we don't force upon anybody, and we deliberately explain to you about how we're going to work with Barnet Voice. We welcome everybody through Barnet Voice to benefit from what they're doing. In fact, it's one of the fundamental objects of our charity is to fund the work of Barnet Voice and to help in the future, and this is far down the line, but to use Barnet Voice's almost 20 years experience to help grow and develop service user-based organisations throughout the country. More than in London, there's quite a few, but as you start going around the country, unfortunately, they're far thinner on the ground. And for those of you that may have family members or have yourself been through different aspects of the mental health system, the most beneficial thing that I think every service user who's coming out and reaching recovery will say, they will pinpoint somebody who helped inspire them to actually realise, you know what, this guy or this lady has got exactly the condition or a very similar condition or, God forbid, even worse than what I'm going through right now, and I can learn from them. And that is one of the most powerful tools. Service user mentoring is something that lots of people are talking about, but it's still really early days. So in developing organisations like Barnet Voice, and Barnet Voice is a flag bearer, that's the phrase, in this field. I mean, torchbearer or flagship. Okay, I like mixing my metaphors. But really, I mean, just to give you an idea, Barnet Voice is the only service user organisation to have had a crisis house. Something we'll talk about as something that comes under a heading of safety for us in terms of deliverables. But that's a wonderful achievement, to have actually provided a safe respite accommodation for people to be able to go to. That doesn't mean going into hospital, but it does give people the space to maybe step out of the home environment, where for those that have suffered depression or extreme anxiety, different disorders, it's so easy to find yourself reclusing into your room, into your four walls that feel safe. And what... Oh.
No, just quick, I just realised I heard what you said. Not the only organisation to have had a crisis house, but the only organisation to have a totally service user led.
That's the only service user group.
Yeah.
Organisation.
If you said that, then I'm saying
But the crisis house is out there, but there's never been one before or since.
But the point is, and what's so valid about the point that Elsie just made, is that people that have gone through that, and certainly those that I've been lucky enough to have met since who've had time in that in Kai House, as it was called, the biggest impact that they felt really was the opportunity to actually, whilst they were there, speak to people who had been through similar journeys, and also get in a very loving way a talking therapy at the same time. Someone who could hear you out, who could give you insight, who could help you on your journey and help you see a future. Because that, as we all know, is one of the most difficult things for people when they're at the lowest points of mental distress, is seeing any sort of future they can somehow get hold of. So, So that's Barnet Voice. So that's why we set up Pure Thought, to be able to have a voice. Okay. So really, I'm going to give you the 8 bullet points of what we set up to deliver, and then Jose and I will share it to go through it. Maybe we'll have a break and get a drink.
Johnny, can I just ask though, in terms of the 8 bullet points of what you're going to deliver,
Yep.
underpinning that are the 3 principles, and for me, I think until I get a sense of what those 3 principles are, I think the pillars aren't going to, they're going to mean something, but I think in terms of the Barnet Voice people who are here, to just get a sense of what the 3 principles are, if you could do them briefly.
So that's really like saying, can you scale Kilimanjaro in 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if it's that difficult, then fine, because perhaps that's why, in terms of the discussions you've had, that we've never quite got to grips with what they are, because but I mean,
So-
they feel crucial, but I've
So
got
I'll give a brief summary, but there's at least 3 or 4 people in the room who I know have been through intensives themselves or going through intensives, who realised that what they thought the 3 principles were after the first day became an awful lot deeper after day 2 and day 3.
Can I say I vouch for that 110%?
okay.
So-
I'm not ashamed to say I'm in the Priory at the moment going through it, and it's helping me far more than anything else I'm having. But I can vouch for it.
Thank you very much. And that's something I just say. I mean, David Veal is a very eminent psychiatrist who's in the Priory, who initially, when we were approached to do an intensive actually with someone in a private hospital, but actually there is talking therapy, we felt we were going to be challenged. But when we spoke to David Veal and gave a brief summary to him, he was totally in support of it. And so, as are a number of psychiatrists. So I'm going to give you, as Elsie's asked, a very, very overview of what the 3 principles are. But I'm probably going to give you, by doing so, a far worse impression of what they are. And what I really say is, we're going to have a 45-minute talk on the AGM on the 23rd, and that will be exclusively about 3 principles. So the 3 principles are really simple. They're 3 words, and it's basically understanding of mind, consciousness, and thought. And from saying those 3 words, probably none of you are any the wiser about what the 3 principles are. But really, if I had to sum it up in a quick way, Nick, you're wonderful. I have to say, before I go any further, Nick and Phil, who sat at the back of the room, along with Jonathan, who's somewhere in the middle, and his lovely partner Louise, if it wasn't for these guys, we would be sat in a, I don't even want to tell you, unpainted walls. Leslie helped with the painting, and Lisa, absolutely. But this is a mock-up of the premises. We'll tell you what this premises is for after we've had a chance to have a coffee and things like that. But this place didn't exist even like this 3 years ago. So thank you guys so much for your help, and I'll thank you properly. But thanks for the water. So basically, mind, consciousness, and thought. What does that mean? Well, if I put it to you this way, and I said, we get taught an awful lot in life. We get taught what to think. We get taught basic. Paddy, feel free to sit next to your wife. So we get taught an awful lot of facts and figures and methods, but we don't get taught about the mind. We don't get taught how to understand what goes on in our head. And yet, our head is the very organ we use to interact with the world on a daily basis. Our head is the very thing that, like a glass that you fill up with water, can overflow at times. It can lead us into depression, can lead us into anxiety, to anger, to all sorts of difficulties. And the wonderful thing about the 3 principles is actually understanding the relationship between the mind and thoughts, seeing thoughts in not the way that we've been taught to think about thoughts through CBT, which has a place, but unfortunately very often tells you what to do with a bad thought, as opposed to understanding that thought and actually learning to understand that thought, the thought of suicide, the thought of very negative things, is only a thought, and it only becomes more powerful than that when you start really focusing in on it. I really don't want to go too much into the three principles because of the fact that I won't do it justice in 5 minutes. But essentially, if I summed it up and just said it's an approach to understanding the human experience, or a better way to help people navigate the human experience through life, and do so in a much more graceful way, that isn't suddenly quite as at the mercy of their thoughts. And suddenly they are actually able to see their thoughts in perspective. And once again, that's not really telling you properly. But
Yeah. Let me say that the Pure Thought is not, as it were, just an organisation that is out there to propound the three principles. Let me make it clear, I am very new to the three principles myself, and I'm very much, I would say, an amateur in terms of the three principles. I know that John is much more advanced in his understanding of the three principles. And so I don't think that you need to obsess about the three principles when thinking about what Pure Thought is all about. What I do understand, and what I from my amateur understanding of the three principles, is that what it's saying is that people are not ill or not ill, need treatment, don't need treatment, but essentially everybody is simply having an experience of life, and that experience may be an experience that is more positive at a particular moment or more negative at a particular moment, and may include experiences which are unusual in terms of their experience of life. But ultimately all that is happening is that people are having an experience of life. And so I know that when I recovered, and I wasn't aware of the three principles when I recovered, but I do know what helped me to recover. And when I go and talk about my own experience of recovery, what I always say is my little strapline, whether I've written an article about it or whether I've gone and given a talk to an organisation about my recovery, is what I recognise for myself without having had any experience of the three principles, is that what helped me to recover was not medication or talking therapy or anything like that. It was about recognising that it was all about how I chose to engage with life. Now, to my mind, that's what's important, is your own experience of engaging with life. And I always say, as my strapline, it's I say it's not what we have materially that makes us happy, but it's how we choose to engage with life. So it's about the experience of engaging with life that I think is what the three principles is about, as I understand it. But I know that that's what's important, is your experience of life. And so Pure Thought is not about going out there and waving the flag for the three principles, because there's the Three Principles organisation and Tikkun that does that. But it's something which is fundamental to what we believe in Pure Thought, which is that it's that people do not either have an illness or not have an illness in terms of mental health. But mental health is just that broad spectrum of human experience.
And one thing I'd say, I mean, there's a couple of gentlemen towards the back, and one of them who I'm so grateful for staying despite his incredible migraine that I know he's been suffering all day. Joachim Schnackenberger, did I pronounce it correctly?
No.
Go on, Joachim.
Doesn't matter.
Schnackenberg.
Just Joachim.
Sorry, Joachim. Joachim works internationally with an organisation that a number of you will also have heard of, which is Hearing Voices Network. And really, from our point of view, the reason we're referencing the three principles is because it's a vehicle that has a very common thread also with the Hearing Voices Network, which was set up originally to deal predominantly with schizophrenia. Would that be a fair? Yeah? Okay. The reality is that what Andy Smith will vouch for is that the positive effect on people's lives that have come to this is such that it has compelled so many people, and Jose and I, or me in particular, have gone down this road, have changed our lives because of it, and have set out to then help other people do the same. Not like a gospel, a church or something like that, but help people reach an understanding for the same level of distress that someone's going through that we've been through. And one of the most beautiful parts of it is, as we look at what I continue talking about delivery and how do we get better access to psychological intervention, psychological therapy, the Three Principles has developed a wonderful network. I mean, there's a Facebook page if anybody wanted to check it out, which is the Inside Out Revolution of the NHS. NHS specifically? Mental health?
I think it's mental health.
Mental health, okay. Thank you. But through that, we've grown a network of about, like, last time I counted, we were over 45 practitioners throughout the UK. All of whom, not all of whom I've spoken to, but a number of whom I've spoken to, and most of whom are prepared to do a lot of pro bono work, to be able to actually develop a network around the UK where people can actually have initial access to psychological therapy. And the wonderful, wonderful thing about it is this work's been going on through Shaul since 2005. The number of people who've had profound change in their life from less than half a dozen sessions. It's not about a therapy that you're going to go through and that's based in Freud, where we're going to go back and back and back and sit there for 2 years. It really is seeing life in a very different way. And as such, it's something that, I mean, some of you here know that I've been talking about an arrangement with a blue chip company that we're trying to develop, where we can actually offer it to a large nationwide business to their staff in return for some joint publicity and some remuneration that can help us grow. But basically on the basis of there is no other proven method that can affect a significant change within less than half a dozen appointments. And so essentially it's a very empowering process that also holds the hand of the individual. So, Elsie, forgive me for giving you more information about
That's fine, I think it just underpins, and I think that's important.
But it underpinned us in realising that when Jose and I in our own journeys were individuals, and individuals who think, well, let's be honest, maybe I'm just different. How many of us have thought that? Maybe my depression or my experience with mental health, there's something about me genetically or my makeup or my weaknesses or whatever. There's something that it was different for me. What we in Barnet Voice know, those of us that work with other service users, is that we all feel the same thoughts. We all experience so many of those same self-questioning and doubting instincts. And actually, sorry, my friend's in the back row. Sorry, I've got to identify you now. So Claire and Nikki both have worked as legal advocates, and Nikki actually works as arguably the most influential solicitor in mental health in the UK today. If it wasn't actually for Nikki's advice, although Jose is probably coming up there close to being in the top 5 very soon, but Jose and I got a client out of hospital last week, released from Section 2, that solicitors had said at the beginning has less than 20% chance of getting out of hospital, and we managed to get that.
And that the psychiatrist had informed his family was a patient who was suffering from a serious psychotic illness that was going to last for him a lifetime.
The psychiatrist who was
And that
actually...
was 4 days.
Psychiatrist
The family
actually...
told him, the family said, the doctor said this to the family 4 days before this man was successfully discharged by myself
This is
and
actually, we're not
a
talking,
Section 2 tribunal. Hopeless.
we're not just talking about a psychiatrist, we're talking about Professor Gerling, who's quite a prominent psychiatrist, who had picked up the phone to his very concerned wife and said, I think you need to prepare yourself that you'll never see the man you married again. And we don't need to go into that case, but thank God we've been working with him. I've even done 4 mediation sessions with he and his wife since getting him out of hospital last Wednesday. So the difference is, it's not us saying he's not unwell. It's not us saying that he doesn't need help, but it's saying the help he was getting in a psychiatric intensive care unit is not conducive to actually his therapeutic recovery. To actually
We'll come to that when we look at the pillars.
Absolutely. So, okay. If people are thirsty and want to drink, please raise your hands. Should we take 10 minutes?